What's going on, guys? Sorry, Zen. It's been a while since I did my Q&A way back in, I think, January of last year. And I've decided to start up a long-form series for ranking all the medias I consume every month. Now, I'm sure some of you have noticed, yeah, Can't Overdo It does the exact same thing, and this was inspired by him. Now, as for why exactly I started to do this in the first place, there are two main reasons. Firstly, and probably the primary reason, my memory is some hot ass garbage. As a result, I couldn't tell you when I consume most of the series that I have, and not having that record in my head means it's hard to keep track of those series. I'm sure some of you guys are thinking, just use my anime list or VNDB to keep track. And let me tell you, my track record there is terrible, and the chances I forget to do so after every media I go through, it's pretty damn high, so yeah. Anyways, I'm doing this monthly media thing primarily so it forces me to keep track of the series I read every month, hopefully for the foreseeable future. And as an added bonus, I get to put my thoughts into video form, which I can come back to later if I, somehow forget how I felt about the series. Now, for the second reason, another friend by the name of Anime Experience, you should totally go check him out, has recently started making a lot more analysis videos, and quite frankly, I would also like to, at some point, make some analysis videos of my own on my own favorite characters. But I'm not exactly Mr. Public Speaking, so these monthly media videos are gonna have to train me for that. And with that out of the way, regarding the rankings themselves, I will generally keep them spoiler free, and if I do have any spoilers to talk about, I will leave it for the end of the section. That way you can just skip on if you don't want to watch it. Now, without further ado, I got through 9 series this month, so let's get into my least favorite media of January 2026. At number 9, we have the YouTube short film Too Many Cooks. Now, before I continue, I do recommend you guys to just go watch it before you continue through this section. It's like 11 minutes, I think? Yeah, but it's best watch when you're completely uninformed of its contents whatsoever. Alright, for those of you still here, I didn't actually plan to watch this because I didn't know they existed. It wasn't on my list, but I was binge watching kill count videos, which for those of you who don't know, kill count is a YouTube channel where they count kills in movies and series, primarily horror. Anyways, I was watching their videos when I stumbled upon the kill count video for Too Many Cooks. And like I did for you guys, the dude in the video recommended I watch it first. So after seeing it was only 11 minutes, I did. Now, as you can probably assume from its ranking on this list, I didn't exactly think it was peak fiction. Now, granted, I think the concept itself is quite intriguing, and they executed it fine. I thought it was kind of entertaining, but at the end of the day, there are two major aspects when considering a series for me: the characters and the story, both of which were just whatever for me. The cast isn't really worth talking about, and aside from the unique concept, which is the film's main selling point, the story, if you can even call it that, didn't really grip me either, so might be y'all's cup of tea, wasn't really for me. At number 8, we have the anime adaptation for the first visual novel I've ever read, 9-9, or as they renamed it for the adaptation, 9 Rulers Crown. Now, as some of you guys may know, I loved 9-9. Definitely an amazing visual novel to set the standard, and probably still in my top 32 series of all time. With that being said, it may be a bit shocking to see the adaptation this low, but then again, it is an adaptation. So, as adaptations do sometimes, they either A, cut content, B, butcher the original content, or C, just change the content entirely in certain places. In this case, the main issue with 9 Rulers Crown was that they technically adapted episode 4 of the visual novel, but they only had 13 episodes to do it. I don't know why they didn't at least do 25, but it resulted in a lot, and I mean a lot, of cut and shuffling around of content, and also some minor changes to the original content it did show, which I actually thought was done fine, but considering how episodes 1 through 3 of the visual novel contributed a lot to the payoffs of episode 4, it just didn't feel quite like the same series. There were also some scenes that were as impactful as they were, because more time was dedicated to fleshing out the moments in the visual novel, but in the anime, they got completely shafted in terms of screen time. So, quite frankly, it was extremely disappointing. But with that being said, I don't think the adaptation is as bad as some people are making it out to be. Granted, it is extremely lackluster when compared to the visual novel, but just the watch itself was still fairly enjoyable for me. Plus, Sora and Ghost exist, so it really can't be that bad. However, if you plan to watch this, just don't. Go read the visual novel, it's so much better. However, if you do plan to watch it anyways, just know that the official translation for the anime is downright horrendous. Even for me, someone who knows what happens, sometimes the dialogue was so bizarre in the translation, I was wondering what the fuck they're talking about. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that Sora's name would be translated as a god, a genius, Tony, and Tenten all in one fucking episode. Now, the fan unofficial translation on highanime.2 is good, so watch it on there if you actually plan to watch it. Now, the rest of this section is going to be spoilers for the 9-9 visual novel, so if you plan to read it, just go on to the next section. Alright, I just want to talk about the scene I really wish was given more screen time, and that's Kakeru's despair after all the girls were killed and left in his apartment. In the anime, while the shock factor was still there, it just didn't feel as raw as it did in the visual novel, and considering this arc in particular is what turned Kakeru from just your slightly above average protag to a good character for me, this felt like an arc that deserved a lot more than what it got in the anime. Also, I got nothing against Miyako. Okay, maybe I do a little bit, but I really wish they just adapted Noah's route since they were adapting episode 4 anyways, but marketing, I guess. Alrighty, on to number 7. We have the first of a trilogy, Loca Love, My Cute Roommate. Now, for those who are unaware, this is Can't Overdo It's all-time favorite visual novel, and he was practically begging me to get to it. So instead of continuing Mr. Robot or starting The Good Place as good friends do, I simply couldn't leave him hanging. Needless to say, I binged it all in one go. 10 out of 10. Alright, but jokes aside, I really didn't think Loca Love was as bad as he made it out to be, especially since I didn't go into it expecting a great romance story. Loca Love has 3 games, with each tackling a different route between 3 girls, and the first game is Hiwa's route. Cast-wise, it's a dating sim eroge. I didn't find the protag as insufferable as I thought, and I thought Hiwa was alright as well, which Can't Overdo It would not quite agree with. Story-wise, it's a dating sim, so expect a ton of cheesy dialogue and flirting. There is still conflict in the story, but let's be real, if you're reading this visual novel, it's either for the memes, or you're here for the eroge dating sim stuff. So, overall, I think it was feel-good and enjoyable enough to not be a complete waste of my time. At numero 6, we have the guy she was interested in wasn't a guy at all, otherwise known as Green Yuri, which is coined by Can't Overdo It for simplicity's sake. As I'm sure you guys could tell by the name and the cover, this is a Yuri. And if there's anything you gotta know about me, I'm a diehard Yuri fan, so the gap between this manga and Loca Love, it's pretty big. And everything from this point on was an actively good read / watch for me. However, considering the nature of this manga, there really isn't too much to say, I guess. The story premise itself can be inferred from the title, and all you have to know besides that is that music is a central part of the story. It's a core theme. The mix of black and white and colored style is pretty, gives a very unique vibe to the manga that I can't quite describe. The cast is well-rounded, no super standout characters, but I like the entire main cast. The dynamics is probably my favorite part about the manga. It felt very natural, and as is often the case for Yuri mangas, it was quite diabetic. Had me grinning like an idiot at multiple points throughout. That all said, though, I think it was just a perfectly above average read. meaning that for every aspect I described earlier, there's a Yuri out there that does it better in my opinion. Art style and graphics, Usonatsu clears. Diabetes, Whisper Me a Love Song exists. Story, Usonatsu and The Summer You Were There are just better. Dynamics wise, it's closer, I guess, but I think Usonatsu and Whisper Me a Love Song still take it in my opinion. This also ties into the reason why it's lower in the rankings. It's staying power. I thoroughly enjoyed it while going through it, but for someone with my memory, if you ask me whether this manga will stay on my mind longer than any of the other series above this entry, I'd say no. Still, it's a short read, still ongoing at around 150 chapters, with around 8 pages per chapter, so I definitely recommend it if you're just looking for a quick, enjoyable binge. Onwards to lucky number 5, which is Canto 9 of Limbus Company, aka Ryoshu's Canto. Before we get into the Canto itself, here's some insight into my Limbus Company experience. So, Can't Overdo It was the sole reason I got into Project Moon in the first place. And throughout his time getting through Lobcore, Ruina, and Limbus, he sent a ton of screenshots as he was getting through the story, which I never objected to, despite my nearly obsessive hatred for spoilers. As a result, when I started up Project Moon, I had a pretty good idea of many of the major plot/character points throughout all 3 games, especially for Limbus Company. So when I finally got to Limbus Company, Cantos 1 through 7 didn't feel quite the same as if I had just gotten into it completely blind. However, that changed for Cantos 8 and 9, which I went into completely blind. That alone already elevated my experience a ton when compared to the previous Cantos, even though Canto 6 and Canto 7 are still my favorite Cantos. Now, time to talk about the Canto itself. Ryoshu, probably the character I had the most initial bias for when starting Limbus Company, and even before, when all I knew about her was through screenshots, and as a result, I was heavily anticipating her Canto, and I'd say the Canto met my expectations, which were decently high. Now, one of the biggest issues with Limbus Company, like the Cantos, in my opinion, is that the first half of the Cantos are generally less interesting, engaging, I guess, than the second half. But in Canto 9, I was actually consistently hooked all the way throughout, which I credit to the mystery surrounding Ryoshu's past that basically kicked off from the very start of the Canto. I thought the House of Spiders was a very intriguing concept, and the antagonists presented in this Canto were arguably my favorite in Limbus so far, especially Rien. The Canto overall was probably one of the most well-rounded Cantos in Limbus. Cast-wise, I really enjoyed the presence of Moses, who's a fucking badass, Hohenheim, everyone's favorite tsundere scientist, and Rien, like I said before, probably my favorite Limbus antagonist now. Ryoshu herself, even though my opinion went up on her a decent bit, she didn't actually go up too much in my character rankings, though she was already pretty high. She's probably my second or third favorite sinner right now. It's close between her and Gregor. Now, with all this praise, I'm sure you're wondering why it's ranked at number 5, and I'll explain that in a bit in the next entry. But for now, I'll just say I've always had a much harder time getting immersed in visual novel/game style stories when compared to any other form of media, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the gameplay that just like cuts off the immersion suddenly, but that's just how it is for me. Or maybe it's just my terrible attention span. And I know I did say the build-up was great, but there were still moments in the Canto where I was kind of going in and out of the immersive state, which did impact my experience a bit. And that constant stream of bosses, that did not help immerse me in the story, so yeah. Oh, but the new Millie song is fucking peak. On to number 4, we have the Manhwa, Maybe Meant to Be. Now, the thing is, it felt a bit weird to put this in this month's media when I technically only read 10 chapters this month, because I caught up to it like 2 to 3 months back, and then I found out it was completed from Can't Overdo It recently, so this is probably the most straightforward entry in this month's media, because quite simply, it was just hella fun to read. Remember in the last section when I said I would explain a bit why Canto 9 is so low? Well, how much I like a series is obviously not black and white. It's a combination of a whole bunch of factors, like how much I like the characters, did the story resonate with me, was it fun, was it unique, yada yada. Well, while that is the case, generally, sometimes if a series excels in a single aspect, especially if that aspect is enjoyability, I'll end up liking that series more than a more well-rounded series. And this concept also applies to characters, which you will see when, I don't know, in 2029 when my top 100 characters comes out. Well, in this case, I thought Canto 9 was more well-rounded, but I just had too much fun reading Maybe Meant to Be to put it below Canto 9. Jahan is my clear favorite here, and though I think the rest of the cast is fine, Jahan and Junari, I guess, are the only characters I actively like a lot. Despite that, they, especially Jahan, carried the entire story on their back, so it didn't really affect my experience at all. I thought the concept of a contractual marriage was entertaining by itself, but the dynamic between the main duo and Jahan just being Jahan made the entire thing so much better. The only real gripe I have with Maybe Meant to Be is that I think it ended too soon. Not the story ended too soon, like there was still more to go through, but I just wanted to see more Jahan, so yeah, definitely recommend to anyone looking for a lighter read. Breaking into the top 3 of January, we have Webtoon character Na Kan Lim. Just so you guys know, this is a reread, which feels a bit strange to put into a monthly media video that implies new media, but let me know in the comments if you guys think I should include rereads and watches. I'll just include them this time. Anyways, the first time around, I was procrastinating on reading it, and it, to the best of my memory, took me over a month to finish. This time around, I was determined to read it through at a more consistent pace so I could get a better experience. I ended up finishing it in over a week, just over a week, and boy, can I tell you, consistency is key, because I enjoyed the fuck out of it this time around. Unlike most harem protagonists, Na Kan Lim is quite likable and realistic, and while I don't quite have as much bias for him as some people do, I can certainly see why people like him as much as they do. The story itself was fine, but let's be real, the real talk is about the gals. I personally like Cha Si-rin and Sunabil the most, though I'm not sure who I like more. I got more pure bias for Cha Si-rin, but I found Sunabil a lot more intriguing as a character. Yeon Bang is also hella underrated for me. I love her dynamic with Yongsu, and she's just a vibe. I mean, I could continue going and rank all the girls in the entire manhwa in terms of favoritism, but I'd rather not start a war, and I'm also too lazy, so yeah. It's probably my favorite harem medium. The only competitor is maybe quintessential quintuplets, but probably not. 'Twas a very enjoyable read, and it has a great story and cast to boot, which is probably what put it over Maybe Meant to Be for me. Time for the penultimate entry. Coming in at numero 2 is Lycoris Recoil. Remember what I said before about a series excelling in an aspect? And that if that aspect was enjoyability, it could top a more balanced series? Well, Lycoris Recoil is literally the perfect example of that, on this ranking in particular. I was on my way back to Japan from America, and I needed a series to binge through on the plane that wasn't too long, because I needed to sleep as well. And then I remembered that Lycoris Recoil was on my 5x5 for 2026, so I said, fuck it. And then I downloaded it, and then binged all 13 episodes plus the OVA. Needless to say, the person next to me on the plane must have had quite the shock, because this series made me laugh out loud multiple times. Chisato, such a fun character. She lights up the whole story every time she appears on screen. And her dynamics with those around her, especially Takina, makes me smile every goddamn time. Cast-wise, Chisato is my absolute favorite. I thought Kurumi was great as well. She's a gremlin, and I fucking love her for it. And I actually did like Majima a lot more than I thought I would, especially towards the end. And as for Takina, I liked her enough, but I think her dynamic with Chisato is what I liked most about her. Story? Yeah, there is one. But, I mean, yeah, there's the final arc of the season. It was good, I guess. But the main appeal of the show, it's Chisato. If you don't like Chisato, you won't like the show. Needless to say, I fucking love Chisato, and I'm putting Lycoris Recoil at number 2, so sue me. And finally, my favorite series of January 2026, coming in at number 1. The series you may or may not have been expecting, Boys Abyss. Now, unlike the other entries, I'm not gonna start off with what I liked, I'm gonna start off with what I disliked. Two main things. One, the conclusion. I'm not gonna say more. If you know, you know. But for those who don't take this as a sign to not read it, because this is literally a it's about the journey, not the destination situation. 2. Nagi Aoi. She's still my third favorite character in the manga, but I really feel like the author could have done so much more with her, both in terms of screen time, which is more of a personal gripe, and also exploration, because she felt more like a plot device for the sake of Reiji's character arc, and also more of a symbol for the narrative rather than a fully fleshed out character. Now, granted, she still has her moments and her own arc, which is why I still like her so much, but I just wanted more. Regardless, her concept was very intriguing to me, so yeah. Now, with that out of the way, let me just say that I've read and watched hundreds of media over the years, from action thrillers to comedies, yada yada, all types of genres. And within those medias, there are obviously a fair share of darker shows. Now, even among the darker shows, I would say that Boys Abyss stands out as a one-of-a-kind. Not even because it's necessarily darker than some of these medias. In fact, I think it's more the opposite. Because Boys Abyss, it knows it's dark, but it doesn't try to push on that dark aspect, but it tries to explore that darkness instead. It explores it through the character's psyche, and it just tells a realistic story about the darkness in human life. It's dark, it's tragic, it's raw, and yet it still feels real. Now, I haven't really dived too deep into these type of mangas, so there may be mangas out there that dive into similar stuff, like Oyasumi Punpun, which I plan to read sometime soon. But I honestly doubt that any other manga / media will make me feel as intrigued about such sensitive topics as Boys Abyss did. Now, even the conclusion, which a lot of people hate, disregarding what they hate about it, it tells a message through the ending of each character's arc, and it almost allowed me to look past how unsatisfied I was. Cast-wise, Yuri, Yuko, and Nagi are my undeniable favorites, with Yuko Kurose being one of the more intriguing characters I've seen in all the time I've been consuming media. And I think the rest of the cast itself, though not as thoroughly explored compared to Yuko and Reiji, they each had their own important contributions to the story that makes Boys Abyss the unique gem that it is. Now, Boys Abyss is not a masterpiece by definition, in my opinion, but in the sense that I doubt I will ever read anything quite like it again. I think I can call it a masterpiece to me. Alright, just finished recording all of the sections, and I am tired as fuck, and rethinking doing this entire series. Anyways, this is the January 2026 mosaic. Huzzah! Take a look at it, because I'm about to switch it to Jajan, the 2026 5x5 media wish list of Horizon. Now, this is the media I want to get through by the end of the year. Now, I would definitely change it now, because I've thought of some entries that I actually want to get to more than some of the entries down here, but this is the official one, so I'm just leave it as is. Now, you can see there's 2 X's. Those are the 2 series I've finished so far, Lycoris Recoil, and the guy she was interested in wasn't a guy at all. Now, for the observant folk, you can probably see that there is a Rin riding on top of an archer on some of these entries. Now, that just means I've started it and I haven't finished it. Like for Loca Love, I've started the trilogy, I finished 1 game, but I still have 2 games to go. And Furious, I started it like more than half a year ago, maybe even a year ago, and I still haven't finished it. Yeah. This month, looking like probably Usogui. I was thinking maybe rereading Usanatsu. Maybe I'll get to one of the visual novels like Omori, Clannad, or Totono if I feel like it. We'll see. And I'm also reading the the one in the middle, I Am Blue, In Pain, and Fragile. It's the same author as I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. And with that being said, yeah, not looking forward to scripting February's video. Hope y'all enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and peace out. I'm gonna go watch Mr. Robot.